Chris Kreider has completely checked out. Plus, should the Rangers be having buyer's remorse for the Carson Soucy trade?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1275 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, another Ranger game, another disappointing performance, another critical loss, this time 3-1 on the road against the Los Angeles Kings, a game where the Rangers honestly came within about 2 inches of being shut out because the one goal that they scored, it was courtesy of JT Miller, but it was ruled no goal on the ice. Then obviously they went to the review, and indeed the puck had crossed the goal line, but they were that close. They were that close to being shut out in this game, a game where the final score, I think, pretty much tells the story in terms of the Rangers' complete and utter ability or even motivation to sustain offense of any kind, to create scoring opportunities of any kind. A game after the Rangers produce a grand total of just 1 shot on goal in the first period, they basically repeated the feat with a grand total of 2 shots on goal in the first period. So they're getting off to just fantastic starts in these games that are, in theory, very important games, but you and I know better. They're just not going to treat it that way. But you know what? The bottom line, nobody is forcing us to watch this team. Nobody is forcing us to stay up until 10:30 at night just to watch the start of this game, much less watch the entire thing and stay up until about 1:15 in the morning. And I realize, there's Ranger fans all over the country, all over the world, and for different fans in different places, these games are starting and ending at different times. But for anybody around the New York City area that's in New York City or in the general vicinity in this time zone, that's what you're looking at. And that's what we all did for those of us that did stay up to watch this. So we don't know when to quit. We don't know when to quit, even more so than the Ranger players know when to quit. Because if you watch this team very clearly, there are some players that are not giving it their all on a game in and game out basis. I didn't think the effort was atrocious in this game, but the execution just wasn't there. And they've made their own bed. They're not going to win games like this because they haven't developed the kind of habits that would lead to you winning games like this. That's what happens when you don't show up for 10, 12, 15 games. You just emphatically no-show for that many games during the course of a season. And there's one player I think that is head and shoulders above all others in that department. And don't get me wrong, he's not the only one. Let me make that clear. But Chris Kreider. Chris Kreider has completely checked out on this team. I really wish I could know exactly how much of an issue his back really is, because we just don't know for sure. He's missed some games due to it this season. Is he in complete and utter agony out there? And that's at least part of the reason why he's putting forward the complete lack of effort that he's been putting forward? Or is this something that isn't really that big of a deal, but he's just playing like this anyway? Anything is believable when it comes to Kreider. And I really wish I knew exactly how much of a factor that was. But when you watch this guy play hockey, there's not really a whole lot there. You look at his most recent stats, what he's done in his last 8 games here. And honestly, you could just look at his season totals and get the same picture. But in his last 8 games, Chris Kreider has 1 goal, no assist. The goal that he scored was with 35 seconds left. The Rangers had their goalie pulled, and they scored a goal to cut the deficit from 2 down to 1. The first goal that the Rangers have scored with their own goalie pulled the entire season. And in theory, that could be a big goal, but let's be honest. We all know the truth. When the Rangers scored that goal there, did anybody really think they were going to get another one in the next 35 seconds? So he basically scored 1 meaningless goal in his last 8 games. Obviously no assist, because why would Kreider have an assist? But despite all of this, and despite his just utter lack of energy or enthusiasm to be out there, he's rewarded last night with 19 minutes, 24 seconds of time on the ice. That is Chris Kreider's highest total since January 4th. Meanwhile, Brett Berard is rotting away in the press box collecting dust. This hardworking rookie that obviously wants to be out there and wants to compete. Yep, no room for him. And we'll talk about that more in just a little bit here. I'm not even saying you have to scratch Kreider to make room for Berard. There were other guys in this lineup that should not have been in there over Berard, but we will get to that. But as far as Kreider, he was one of the guys who was largely responsible for what turned out to be the Kings' game-winning goal. We will break that one down in greater detail a little bit later when we talk about Carson Soucy. But, you just look at the way that they're using Kreider and the fact that not only does his ice time and his role on this team not suffer due to his play, and again, his complete lack of enthusiasm or energy on the ice, but he actually gets rewarded for it. He was on the top power play unit last night, and JT Miller was not. How does that happen? I realize right now there's basically 5 forwards for 4 spots on the Ranger top power play unit. I mean, they're not going to go back to 5 forwards. We saw what a mess that was. And obviously, Adam Fox is back now. So you've got 5 forwards for 4 spots. You could make Kreider the odd man out. You could make Trocheck the odd man out, maybe even Mika. But JT Miller, Chris Kreider has done more to earn a spot on that top power play unit than JT Miller. And it's not even like Miller's been fantastic lately, but he's been a heck of a lot better than Kreider. Kreider was out there on the power play in the third period. There was a rebound laying in the crease right there for the taking. And Kreider's very late to get there, doesn't exactly zip over there when he saw it. Then right after this, the puck is along the boards. Kreider's there too, and in theory, he's in the middle of a puck battle, but then he just backs away from it. Lets his teammates step in there instead. I joked about this on social media. I know we're kind of veering off the Kreider topic and looking at the power play as a whole, but obviously Kreider's part of that whole picture. I joked on Twitter last night that, or it might have been this morning, I don't even know. All this is blending together, especially after you stay up late watching this nonsense. And I joked that the player that has the best chance to score when the Rangers are on the power play right now is the player that is in the penalty box. And the reason for that is, first of all, the Rangers aren't going to score. I mean, look at their power play lately. What are they, like 4 for 45 coming into this game? Didn't score on the power play in this one either. And there's a very good chance that the Rangers are going to forget to cover the guy coming out of the penalty box when he leaves the penalty box. So I stand by that. I think that the player with the best chance of scoring when the Rangers have a power play is the guy that took the penalty, the guy that's in the penalty box. Because there's a decent chance, like I said, he'll get a breakaway or at least a partial breakaway once the penalty runs out and once he gets out of the penalty box, because the Rangers just won't account for him. And you watch, the way that Kreider plays and everything. And how does Peter Laviolette respond to all this? More ice time, more power play time for Chris Kreider. He puts him on the ice at the end of the game. He would do this whether the game was tied, whether the Rangers were up by 1 goal, whether the Rangers were down by 1 goal. Chris Kreider would be on the ice at the very end of this game. And I know Kreider had that empty netter not too long ago. Who cares? He's done nothing else. And it's getting to the point where this unit, this group of 6 players that's always on the ice at the end of the games, not only do they never score a goal when the Rangers have pulled their goalie, but they never even come close. The Rangers pulled Igor with almost 2 minutes to go in this game. They did not have a shot on goal after that. And again, this is not just Kreider, but he's one of the first guys that I would remove from, that group of 6 players that's going to be out there after the Rangers pull Igor Shesterkin. There's other candidates too, don't get me wrong, but he's the first one that has no business being out there in this situation based on everything he's done this season, the way he's carried himself, et cetera, et cetera. You guys watch this team just like I do, and I think mostly everybody would agree, and mostly everybody would know, what I'm talking about here. So, here's something else I have to throw out there in terms of Kreider and the overall lack of effort. Peter Laviolette. You can critique Laviolette for a lot of things, and we've done that, and certainly we're not the only ones. You guys have had your say in the comment section for sure. People on social media have voiced their opinion. There was a Fire Lavi chant not too long ago at Madison Square Garden, getting near the end of one of the Rangers' more atrocious performances of the season. That's the first time that had happened, too. Ranger fans in attendance had at least some patience before they broke out that chant. But one thing you cannot question Lavi for is his loyalty. He is loyal to a fault. And he's loyal to these veterans that are simply not getting the job done, whether it's Fox or Mika or Kreider or Lafreniere is now a veteran. I don't care about his age. He signed the big contract. He's in his 5th year. He's now a veteran. He's not getting it done. Trocheck, it kind of comes and goes, But Peter Laviolette is blindly loyal to all these players. He puts them out there at the end of the game. So for Chris Kreider to mail it in the way that he's mailed it in this season and quit on his coach the way that he has, I think he needs to take a good long look in the mirror for that. Because Peter Laviolette, other than the one healthy scratching, which was clearly warranted at that point, Pierre Laviolette has had this guy's back through thick and thin. He's always putting him out there in big situations, in big spots in the games. I don't think he should be doing that, but he is nonetheless very loyal to the veteran players, the high-paid players, and the supposed star players. So that makes it even worse that Kreider has mailed it in on Laviolette the way that he has. And, I've talked about this as well, but I just can't believe that this is the way it's probably going to end with Chris Kreider as a member of the New York Rangers, because his full no move clause in the offseason goes down to 15 teams. I think the Rangers are going to be working the phones, taking whatever they can get for Chris Kreider. It's probably going to be a glorified salary dump. That's if you can even move him at all, because look at the way he's played this year. Who is going to look at Chris Kreider game tape from this season and say, yeah, that's what we need, and we need it for $6.5 million per season for the next 2 seasons? I don't think teams are going to be lining up around the block for that. And again, he's got that 15-team no-trade list, which he can use. So you're down to just 16 teams that you can talk to in terms of trying to find a dance partner in a Chris Kreider trade. And I just think that's going to be very difficult to do. You might be looking at a situation where if they can trade Kreider at all, it'll be for future considerations. It won't be for anything substantial in return. One other thing that I got to mention here, the topic of Chris Kreider and his jersey going into the rafters. This is something that we've debated on and off over the years here on Locked On New York Rangers. When you look at the all-time Ranger list, you can't take this away from Kreider. His name is pretty high on a lot of those lists, and he has been part of a lot of playoff runs, a lot of success here. He's had some big moments. But being on the fence about that and now seeing what he's done this season, this is putting me on the side of no, don't put it up there. Am I being too harsh? Does one season where you basically quit, does that nullify your entire career? Does that nullify all the big numbers? I don't know. That's something that we have to debate in a future episode, and feel free to weigh in the YouTube comment section or whatever it might be. But, we had that interview not too long ago where Kreider was talking about the Rangers in the past tense. Didn't really like that. And I just would have thought that, Kreider, for whatever problems he might have with Chris Drury, with the Rangers front office, with the organization, with the coaching staff, maybe even with some of his teammates. I don't know. We don't know what goes on behind these closed doors, so it's difficult to say for sure. Whatever issues he has with the Rangers, any of his teammates, any of the coaches, Chris Drury, whoever it might be, I would have just thought that he would put that aside and continue to look at the positives with the Rangers. The fact that this team drafted him, the fact that this team wanted him to stick around through the rebuild, the fact that he spent 14 seasons here, the fact that he's had all these accomplishments and made all these deep playoff runs and come at least somewhat close to winning a Stanley Cup here. The fact that he might one day get his name and his number in the rafters. I would have thought all those things, his charity work, all the connections he's made with the fans, the list goes on and on and on. I would have thought that stuff would be more important. The good things would be more important to Chris Kreider than the bad things. However he feels about Jim Ramsey getting fired. And that's a whole nother story. And at some point, I'd like to hear the full story. There's theories out there, but I don't think there's ever been anything concrete there. But, the Rangers firing Jim Ramsey, the Rangers trading their worst player, Jacob Trouba, the Rangers trading strong playoff run aside last season, one of their other weaker players in Barclay Goodrow, or rather waiving him, but bottom line, they did it to move on. He's going to let that ruin everything? He wants this is how he wants to go out as a member of the New York Rangers. Does he want to go somewhere else? That's the thing. He's so just not there that I can't even get a feel for what he wants. Does he want to stay here? Would he block a trade if the Rangers tried to deal him to a team that's on his his no trade list this offseason? Does he want to go somewhere else? Has he just had enough? Would he put in a better effort somewhere else? I don't know. But I think pretty soon we're going to find out. I cannot imagine that he's back next season after what we've seen this season. And it's just a sad, sad ending. And it's as bad of an ending as I ever could have possibly imagined that Chris Kreider would have as a member of the New York Rangers. It's just a sad situation. We're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and shift our attention to some of the lineup changes that Peter Laviolette made coming into this game. And we will get to that and break those down in just a second. We will also talk about the Carson Soucy trade and how it really hasn't gone very well, at least thus far. We'll get to all that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to thank everybody, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day, and let you know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. We've all been in that spot where we need to hire somebody like yesterday. The pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed's sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all that you need. All right, big shout out to the everydayers, as always, for sticking with this podcast. I do apologize for my voice today, too. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but throat is a little sore. Bottom line, in our next episode, we've actually already recorded this. We are going to have comments from the Locked On New York Ranger listeners on who they believe should win the Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award. It's slim pickings this year, but there are a couple of good candidates in there. And, everybody is going to have their voice be heard in our next episode on that. Also, we'll be doing a Saturday episode instead of a Friday episode due to the fact that the Rangers play hockey at 10 p.m. on Friday night. But let's go ahead and shift our attention to some lineup decisions that were made before this game. To begin with, Panarin, Trocheck, and Othmann. I really like this. I was hoping that sooner or later Othmann would move up the lineup. This is basically his first chance. I mean, has he been anywhere other than the fourth line? Maybe one or two games on the third line. That's about it. Nothing overly spectacular from this line. Nothing that, I think makes your blood boil either. There was one play that I really liked from Brandon Othmann. You guys will love this. There was a situation where the Kings are breaking into the Rangers zone. They gain the blue line, and Brandon Othmann was busting out on the back check and stole the puck and went the other way. For just a second, I thought it was Kreider. I don't know why I thought that. But Brandon Othmann with a nice defensive play there. I'd like to see him get more of an opportunity moving forward, and hopefully this is a sign of what's to come. You then had Lafreniere, JT Miller, and Johnny Brodzinski. This is a line that was together at the end of the most recent game, and they kind of went off. I mean, Brodzinski scored twice. Lafreniere had the 3 assists. So to me, you had to keep this line together for at least, the next game. I don't think they did really as much in this one, but I was happy to see Johnny Brodzinski get rewarded with some minutes in the top 6. The only disappointment there is that now Kreider and Mika have to be back together on the same line, and they're out there with Will Cooley. Not sure what Will Cooley did to deserve that, but you can't. I mean, it's hard to, with everybody having such a down season, it's kind of hard to make all the pieces fit in really any which way, and that's kind of just by default your third line. Then the fourth line, you got Nicholas Aube-Kubel making his Ranger debut on left wing, fourth line, Juuso Parssinen at center, and Matt Rempe at right wing. Because when you can take 2 veteran, journeyman, borderline NHL players and put them into your lineup instead of your own hardworking, gritty, homegrown prospect in Brett Berard, and that's exactly what you've got to do. You cannot even hope to do anything other than that. There's no other way to go. Brett Berard, no room for you, dude. We got to make room for trade deadline throw-ins like Nicholas Aube-Kubel and Juuso Parssinen. I'll be completely honest, and those of you that follow me on Twitter might have seen this. I forgot Aube-Kubel was with the Rangers. And the funny thing is I actually went on the Puckpedia website after Aube-Kubel had been called up, but before I noticed it on social media. So I'm looking at the Ranger roster. I'm like, Nicholas Aube-Kubel, when did we get him? And it was just kind of a minor trade. I think it was Brandstrom that we sent away to get Aube-Kubel. But that's the guy you got to put in your lineup over Brett Berard. Jimmy Vesey is gone. Riley Smith is gone. Sam Carrick was on parental leave. And Brett Berard still cannot get into the lineup because you got to make way for the Juuso Parssinens and the Nicholas Aube-Kubels of the world. Laviolette is just losing me with some of the, he's lost a lot of us a lot earlier than this, and myself as well. I defended him for as long as I could. And despite everything, I still put this on the players more than on Laviolette. But he certainly is not blameless. And he's made some decisions that really make you scratch your head and just do not make any sense whatsoever. By the way, congratulations to Sam Carrick. That was the best Ranger news yesterday, is that Sam Carrick, welcome to Sun. And it sounds like everybody's doing great. And that's awesome. And obviously he's away for this game. And you know what? Awesome for Sam Carrick. One of the frontrunners for the extra effort award. Sam, you know what? On the off chance that you listen to this, your family deserves you more than your New York Ranger teammates do. So by all means, take your time getting back. I wouldn't even fault him if he wasn't there for this game on Friday. What is there to come back to? He's one of the only guys that's out there giving any heart, any hustle, and any effort on any given night. So yeah, there's all that. Thought this was interesting too. Igor Shesterkin was in net, and that marked a new career high for Igor Shesterkin, or at the very least, he tied his career high. I'm not sure which it was, but he made his 8th consecutive start. Obviously, that does not include playoff hockey, because when the playoffs roll around, he's out there every single night. So that's kind of interesting, and I think it speaks volumes about where the Rangers are right now and just how desperate they are for Igor to basically carry them to a win. And that's another thing that can drive you absolutely just nuts about this game. Igor was amazing again, and it didn't matter again. It's another wasted, outstanding performance by Igor Shesterkin in a season that has a good amount of those, and I think more so recently than any other time during the season. He's really played well in a lot of recent games, really stood on his head, really been under fire, has made some spectacular saves, and yet it's not even leading to a win all that often. It did in the game before this one against the Canucks, but it didn't in this game. He ends up with 30 saves on 32 shots, absolutely stood on his head in the third period. I thought maybe that was when he was at his best. You know, I said something on here not too long ago that I still believe. I believe it more than I did when I said it, but I didn't realize like how true it really was. The Rangers' fate lies solely in the hands of Igor Shesterkin, because if that guy is not in absolute God mode, the Rangers are not going to win. They're not. And even if he is in absolute God mode, a win is far from a sure thing. We saw it last night. We've seen it a couple of times recently. The Flames game. I mean, the Rangers were out to lunch. They were asleep. They lose that game 2-1. The expected goals scored in that game, I think it was like over 4 for the Flames, and it was like under 1 for the Rangers, and you have a 1-goal game at the very end. There's only one reason why that was the case, and that was Igor Shesterkin. And yes, because there will be some people that point this out too. The Rangers overdid it with Igor Shesterkin's contract. I'd love it for it to be $8.5 million instead of $11.5 million. And yes, Igor has had some bad games this season. And yes, I would still argue, in spite of everything that I just said good about Igor, this is his weakest of his 5 seasons in the NHL. But he's still a bright spot on this team. He's still the only reason they've got any shot of doing anything relevant at the end of this season. He's got to be the biggest reason. Who else? Who's a bigger reason than Igor Shesterkin that the Rangers, at least in theory, still have a chance? Panarin? I mean, you could make a case for Panarin. You know, he's racked up points. He's been on fire recently. JT Miller's only been here for half the season. You can't really make a case for him. I mean, the defenseman, forget it. Which defenseman are you going to say is the reason why the Rangers at least still have a chance? Is there anybody else? Lafreniere, Kreider, Mika? Yeah, okay. Trocheck a little bit, I guess. You know, I mean, he's had some good stretches this season. It's Igor. Igor is the biggest reason why the Rangers are even quasi-relevant at this point in the season as it pertains to, you know, the big picture and them still being at least in theory alive here. But as far as like how to handle the goalies moving forward here, I think you're going to basically just keep seeing Igor Shesterkin. Now, I don't think he'll start all of the remaining games, but you've got a back-to-back coming up this weekend. On Friday and Saturday, the Rangers are at the Ducks Friday and at the Sharks on Saturday. What I would do, if it were up to me, and it's not, I would play Igor Shesterkin on Friday against the Ducks, because with this loss to the Kings, the Rangers had 2 days off before that, and they're about to have 2 days off after that. So it's only one game in 5 days. So Igor, despite having a big workload recently, he'll be ready to go for the Friday game. And on top of that, the Ducks are a little bit better of a team than the Sharks, so I like putting Igor out there for that. And then I think you go quick on Saturday, because at some point you have to give Igor a little bit of a breather. But honestly, that might be it. That might be Quick's last start of the season. For as long as the Rangers are mathematically alive, it might just be Igor, because that's their only chance. It's their only chance. I mean, you could go Igor the rest of the way if you're still alive. But if you did that, it would be 18 games in a row for Igor Shesterkin to close the season. I don't think they're going to do that. So my guess is that Quick will get one of these 2 games of the back-to-back, and my hope is that it's the second of the 2 due to the schedule, like I just mentioned, and the fact that, again, the Sharks are a weaker team than the Ducks. The Rangers should be able to put Domingue, Garand, any of these other goalies in the system into net against the Sharks, and they should be able to win that game. So we'll see how they look to play it. But again, very bizarre lineup changes in some instances for Laviolette. A couple of things that I actually liked. I liked seeing Brodzinski get rewarded. I like seeing Offman get a shot with, Panarin and Trocheck, but some strange things as well. And obviously with Igor Shesterkin, just another wasted strong performance by this team. Going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to shift our attention to Carson Soucy and the idea that, could the Rangers be having some buyer's remorse there? Because I don't think he's exactly hit the ground running in his Ranger career, but we'll talk more about that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Trade Coffee. If you're like a lot of people, your mornings must start with a good cup of coffee. But it's easy to get tired of selling for grocery store brands that just do not cut it. That's why so many turn to Trade and their coffee, which is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they will handpick the perfect match just for you. The subscription makes it so easy. No more last-minute grocery store runs or settling for whatever is on the shelf. And if you don't love your first bag, no worries. Trade will replace it for free until they get it just right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. That's drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl for 40% off your first order. drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. I want to conclude today's episode by talking about a little bit about Carson Soucy, his overall struggles, and whether the Rangers could be or should be having buyer's remorse after making that trade with the Vancouver Canucks. Now, to begin with, let me just say, Soucy has only played a grand total of 7 games with the Rangers, but overall, I don't think it's been very good. To begin with, this is kind of alarming. He's already been a healthy scratch 3 times, 3 straight games. And that was after only playing in 5 games. So 5 games into the lineup after the trade, then a healthy scratch for 3 straight games. And we know how much Peter Laviolette does not like playing Zach Jones, and Jones has remained in the lineup. And, Vakanainen, I think, was okay. But for him to not be able to beat out Vakanainen for a handful of games there, maybe that's not the best thing either. I will say, when the Rangers made this move, when they traded for Carson Soucy, I liked the move. I thought overall it was a good idea. I could kind of see where they were coming from. This felt to me like a little bit of a buy low opportunity because Soucy has been a good defenseman for most of his NHL career. He is having a down year this year. You look at everything he did with Vancouver, that certainly would suggest that. And you think like maybe a change of scenery could help. He is signed next year for what I think is a reasonable cap hit of just $3.25 million. And on top of that, the Rangers don't overextend themselves. They don't overcommit to Soucy because he will be an unrestricted free agent before he turns 32 years old. So it's not like they've got this guy signed until he's 36, 37, 38 years old. It's nothing like that. He'll be in his early 30s when he hits free agency. And once he becomes a UFA, the Rangers can then decide, is this still a fit? Do we want to bring him back? Does Soucy want to be back? Et cetera, et cetera. And on top of all that, Soucy only has a 12-team no trade list next season. So that means that the Rangers have another rough season. They will be very able to trade him at the deadline and get whatever they can for him. So to me, there was a lot to like about that deal. And the other thing I'll say in defense of Soucy is that, he's got that same situation that everybody has when they get traded. New team, new teammates, new coaches, etc. And, by all looks, what appears to be a poison locker room. I mean, let's just be honest and call it what it is at this point in the season. So he goes into a tough spot. And his numbers don't look terrible. He's played 7 games. He's actually got a goal and 2 assists. He's an even plus minus, 6 block shots and 16 hits. But the early eye test to me just is not really looking all that good. He looks so immobile out there. Like this guy, when he has to change direction and go from this way to that way, it just takes him forever to like stop and turn the other way and get his momentum going. Doesn't seem to be the best skater in the world. I think his skating certainly leaves something to be desired. And on top of that, and this might be a product of him being new there, he doesn't seem to have much chemistry with Adam Fox. They haven't played together a whole lot, but we saw them collide in a recent game, and that led to a goal for the opposition. And I don't know, something just doesn't seem to be clicking there, at least so far. But I'm willing to give that more of a chance. I'm certainly not going to give up on that pairing this quickly. And maybe, going into next season, if those two are still together, there will be better results. I mean, they'll have all of the offseason and training camp and the preseason to get on the same page. It's tough to do it in the middle of the year. So I can certainly appreciate that. But the early returns for this pairing have really not been good. And Soucy had a really rough game last night. There were a couple of instances. He had a giveaway in the first period that easily could have led to a goal for the Kings. Soucy's behind the net. And for some reason, he comes out the right side and just passes the puck nonchalantly into the center of the ice. I just could not believe what I was seeing. And Igor had gone behind the net to play the puck and was still getting back into his crease. So this very easily could have been a goal just like that. And it wasn't, but the Kings had some sustained offensive zone pressure as a result of this and seemed to build their momentum off of this just awful turnover by Soucy here. Igor had to make a couple of saves to bail him out in that sequence as well. Really nice right skate save. Then there was a brutal play in the second period that led to a game-winning goal for the Kings. And Soucy and Kreider can share the blame equally on this one. You've got a power play for the Kings. You've got Mika, Kreider, Soucy, and Borgen on the ice for the New York Rangers. Soucy had the puck, and the puck went over the Ranger blue line, but there's not really a lot of pressure on him. He's along the right side, and you think he's going to be able to clear the puck down the ice, but for some reason, he tries to clear the puck. At least that's what I think he was doing. And he plays it like softly off the boards. It bounced off the boards, and the Kings held it in the zone. And really, it wasn't even that difficult of a keep-in. I mean, why not just whip the puck off the boards? And even if the Kings are able to knock it down, like that's coming in hot, and it might bounce this way, it might bounce that way. Fire the puck out of the zone. I don't know what this was here. He basically moved the puck with like 25% of the force that he could have put on this. And as a result, the Kings are able to knock it down. The play continues. The offensive zone possession continues for the Kings. And then you have Kreider giving the puck away along the boards. The Kings make a pass. They take a shot. Great save by Igor. The rebound is buried. And I joked at the time, watch somebody on social media try to blame this one on Igor Shesterkin. You'd have to be out of your mind. But I don't know, man. It just has not been good for Soucy. Laviolette doesn't seem to trust him. I mean, I don't trust Laviolette at this point, but Laviolette doesn't seem to trust him. You have a situation now where Soucy is only averaging 14 minutes, 51 seconds of time on the ice per game with the Rangers, which is the lowest of his career. He's never had time on the ice lower than that. So I think that says it all. But we'll call it there. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in, and I will see you next time.